Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to RPG Horror Stories. This time, I believe I may have picked out some slightly lighter ones. However, we still will be ending on a heavier note. Let's get on with the stories. But first, I want to ask you something. Do you guys feel like you'd be interested in having comments showcased before the beginning of every video? I feel like I would like to do that. So, hey, if you're interested in that, leave a like, leave a comment down below. Subscribe to the channel too. Really helps me out. Alright, we're going to be starting off strong with nat 20 equals perfect failure. Second-hand story and a minor one from an old website that has since vanished into the ether. The party was recruited by a wizard to rescue an old friend from a prison ship in space. Spelljammer setting. The wizard is capable of opening a portal to the ship, but has to stay behind to keep this portal open for the return journey. To cut a long story short, the party uses a combination of stealth, bluff, and combat to reach the prisoner and free him. But during the escape, the ship is attacked by space pirates and the scene becomes a war sequence. The prison ship's crew desperately try to repel boarders, while the ship shakes with the impact of artillery fire, all while the party is caught in the middle. Defying odds, the party manages to make it back to where they started, only to find that the ship has cracked in two under the barrage and the portal is on the other half. They can see the wizard and his laboratory through the portal, but a wide and widening gulf between two halves of the ship cut the party off from their escape route. The thief wants to throw a grappling hook. The DM permits it, but warns that the distance means the thief will have to make a perfect throw to pull it off. The thief rolls a natural 20, and the DM sour face. Dungeon Master then narrates that the thief does in fact make a perfect throw, and the grappling hook sails straight through the exact center of the portal, beating the wizard on the head and breaking his concentration. The portal closes, and the party is stuck. They are quickly captured by the boarders and taken prisoner aboard the braiding ship, where the next part of the plot happens. I mean, if you're gonna railroad, you may as well get a good laugh out of it. Now, this is a hilarious story. I don't blame them for railroading, because if I'm gonna be honest, if you're DMing in 2nd edition, or really any version of Dungeons & Dragons, not everything is succeedable and not everything is failable. Sometimes, you just gotta make sure that your players feel like they failed upwards. Aside from that, this is just really fucking good. I don't think I can classify this as a horror story. Good on you, OP. This is a great find. This is fucking hilarious, and I hope that there's more where that came from. Player uses a D20 for all of their damage rolls. This isn't much of a horror story, but it is pretty funny and deserves to be shared. I am running a heavily homebrewed version of Tomb of Annihilation for 2 new players. We started with a couple one-shots before starting this campaign. One of my players knows a fair bit about Dungeons & Dragons through podcasts mostly. The other has barely even heard about it before we started. We are now about 3 months in, and the less experienced player just told me that they've accidentally been using a D20 for all of their damage rolls. We play really fast and loose with the rules, and I'm really generous with magic items, and we start at 2nd level and we're now at 5th, so their rolls never seemed unusual to me. A little higher than I expected, nothing crazy. We play online, but we don't use Roll20 or anything. Let me see their rolls, so I just never realized. The player realized it themselves, luckily, and just told me. We're all close friends, and it's a very casual game, so I'm not upset, but I do want to mess with them a little bit. If anyone has suggestions, I'd love to hear them. Okay, LP, here's my advice. If you really want to mess with them, you've got to do something that exemplifies this mistake. You've got to make something that commemorates this mistake and, figuring it out. So, in the light of the player having figured out this mistake themselves, I would say to give them a sword, alright, something that's befitting their character, but I'm just going to say a sword that has the 1d20 damage roll with disadvantage. So, the average will be about 12, 13 instead of the usual 14, 15 average on that dice. And because they were using the 1d20 and they didn't realize for a hot minute I would say to give the sword a -1 to wisdom, but because they found it in themselves, a +2 to perception. As much as that might seem broken, I think it really exemplifies the character, the player that made the mistake, and it's something that could just be really fucking cool, especially if you end up playing more campaigns, because you can actually hand the sword down between characters, have other adventures, find tales of lost treasures, and they find this sword, which they know to be this original character's sword, and they know it to be really fucking cool and powerful. So it'll create this, sense of a living world if they can get the loot from their previous characters, from side quests, and from adventuring, and finding, what has happened to their characters after they were done with them. What happened to the loot after they died? How did, the history of the world becomes intertwined with their own characters, and it's something that is really fucking fun to do. Much love, stay sexy. On with the next post. The edgiest character you've played with? This is a shorter post. For me, it was a barbarian turtle player who had named his character Dreadshell. His backstory was that when his mother was pregnant with him, the eggs, and he was about to give birth, he entered into a rage and the woman accidentally killed her. He then somehow took her fully adult-sized shell as his own. Turtles are not hermit crabs, and he described it as decayed to show the bleach white bone shell underneath. Not how shells work. He then went on to describe how he would take the bladed weapons of his defeated enemies and stab them through the back of his shell so that the tips would scrape along his back and fuel his rage, in an attempt to circumvent rage mechanics. To be fair, played as a one-shot parody character, I love the idea of Penance the Cubone Turtle, but unfortunately, he was 100% serious about the entire thing. That is so fucking edgy. That's so edgy. I think I might have a paper cut just from reading that. Let's read a couple of the comments. I've told this story in the sub 100 times, so please forgive me if it sounds familiar. Almost 20 years ago, I participated in session 0 of an anime-inspired superhero game. My character was basically a young Bruce Wayne with a 12-foot mech. One of the PCs, played by a 20-something male, was a preteen girl whose phenomenal magic powers were only activated after being raped. One of the other players was basically playing Master Roshi from Dragon Ball, but with more rape. The plan that the two had cooked up was that basically before every fight, they would have sex in character against the female character's wishes, and then proceed to whoop all sorts of ass. I have never in my life noped out of a game faster or more aggressively than I did in that game. Listen, people, if you're gonna have a porn D&D session between your players, don't try and pull off Discount Bible Black. At the very least, you've got to be doing like Tsuganai or fucking Eroge Mogemo Kaihatsu. Something like that. And yes, I did just list off a bunch of hentai. You should go watch them. Most of them are good. Oh, New Testament of Bible Black has a few Gudo scenes, but still good. I made a fallen Aasimar Death Domain cleric named Silas Denwell. He was edgy and liked to play the tall, creepy, quiet guy in the back, but he was also the most well-educated member of the group, so he somehow became the group leader. He was soft-spoken and didn't speak much unless spoken to. Unless I need to make an intimidation check, then it was pop the wings, use 3 quick thaumaturgies to blow all the candles in the room out, make his eyes hollow voids, and make his voice super loud, then go on a sermon for the majority of combat shouting, "Death is an eternal silent hunter and has come to reap its harvest for those who have disrespected the law of this land." He carried a scythe, skinned glaive. His spectral weapon was a scythe, and when he wasn't in intimidation mode, he would preach about the neutral and loving embrace of death and trying to get people to respect it, but not necessarily fear it if you had lived well. He performed funerals and gave his money to people in need when he saw them. He also once used thaumaturgy voice and the candle extinguisher to convince a pirate crew that their ship was marked by death and horrible tragedy would befall anyone who stayed aboard. And that's how their party got their own free schooner. Does Silas Dunwale also, do you worship Grotus or something? I feel like this player themselves worship Grotus. That's so fucking Grotus. Holy fuck. I love this. Like, maybe, except for the mid-combat pontificating, as they're saying in the comments on this comment. But you know what? Maybe I think it works. I think it works. It's like knife edge, but it's like funny knife edge, and it works. And lastly, we have no one showed up twice. This, honestly, isn't much of a horror story. It's more just kinda sad that I wanted to rant. Some backstory. I am 16 and my dads have been playing Pathfinder and other tabletop RPGs since before I was born. When I was in 3rd grade, they helped me, my brother, and a friend of ours make Pathfinder characters, but we never got to use them. I also played in a one-shot or a short module or two, and they've run, but for the most part, I've just wanted to play and I've never been able to. 2 years ago, I tried to put together a game over Discord with my cousin and a few friends. I was going to DM, but I was also kind of in charge of scheduling and stuff since no one else would put in the work. I pinged a few people a few days before making our characters. The first session we would ever had. Just to remind people and make sure they could still make it. If the session calls, I hop in early. I ping a bit before we start. No response. I message again when we're supposed to start. 1 or 2 people are online, but they don't respond. One of my friends joins after one message, but they're called away by their mom after a bit. 30 minutes after we were supposed to meet up, I call my cousin directly. She tells me she's at a sleepover because she had forgotten that we were supposed to play that weekend. I'm honestly still mad about that because I had specifically chosen a day that everyone had confirmed worked for them and reminded everyone ahead of time that we had scheduled it. In fact, she had told me 3 days before the meeting that she would be there. Just to say, I'm pretty upset. I stayed in the call alone for about an hour in case anyone did show up. No one did. And then I went to cry to my mom's because I had been really excited to actually get to play some Pathfinder, and no one showed up. So that campaign fizzled out and died before it even began. Fast forward to last fall. I try to put together a group again. This will include my cousin, friend who did manage to show up before, my younger sister, as well as a few of my school friends. We have a session to make characters and everything goes great. It's a little awkward because some of them don't really know each other, but overall it looks like it could work. It looks like it could really work. Not everyone finishes their characters since most of them are really new and overwhelmed, so we set up a new session. Although because of a few factors, we can't meet again until December. Guess what happens next? No one shows up other than my cousin. Again, no warnings that people can't make it, no messages that anything came up, no nothing. Even the player whom I was dating at that time, and who tended to be extremely needy for attention, was a no call, no show. Cousin, sister, and I still managed to have a bit of fun and talk about some stuff, but campaign wasn't totally horrible. I still lost some motivation. About a week later, I get hit hard by depression. The player and I break up. A few weeks later, I start getting real busy. Eventually, I just kill the campaign because it's clearly not happening anymore. I'm now trying one last time to set up a campaign, and I've made a few changes to how we'll be scheduling things so it will hopefully be easier to fit into our chaotic lives. I'm also pre-making characters for them so that we don't have a repeat of last time. But yeah, not sure if I did something wrong somewhere or if I just have really shitty luck. I've lost 2 potential campaigns to players not showing up en masse. Here's my advice, OP. Listen, my heart goes out for you, but here's what I'm gonna say. You may or may not like it. Ask your parents if they still play Pathfinder. Ask them if you can join into their party. Ask them if you can play with them or if you can DM for them sometime. It could be a great way to further your relationship with your parents. It could be a pretty nice way to have a somewhat reliable party. If you don't want to do that, or you can't join their party for any reason, or you can't DM for them for whatever reason, host a paid session on Roll20. I would heavily recommend Foundry Virtual Tabletop. It is my favorite thing for DMing in Dungeons & Dragons over the internet. It is fucking amazing. But I would recommend advertising the session using Roll20 and using a paid session. You know, $20. If people have skin in the game, they tend to show up a lot more. Because if they don't show up, they're losing money. They have to pay to join. If if they don't show up, they are losing money because they're losing out on the amount of time that they paid to show up for. So, it's a pretty solid way to get people to show up. And if they're starting to show up very regularly, you can just drop the paid requirement and just start hosting it over Discord and everything. You don't have to use Roll20 anymore after you have the session set up. Aside from that, I don't have much I can say because people tend to flake out. As much as I hate being able to say this, it is true. People do flake out of free-to-play Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinders, tabletop RPGs in general, a lot. Because there's not skin in the game. You have to put something at stake. And unless you're literally middle of the story, there's nothing there for them yet. So, a little bit of money to join goes a long way. Especially for that first 3 to 4 sessions. That's it for today, everyone. Much love, stay sexy, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. I'll be streaming live on Twitch a little bit after this. And you guys, I hope you stay sexy. Bye-bye!